Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, Gordo Gambles, and welcome back to their full card breakdown. This time for UFC Saudi Arabia. We are abroad, across the sea, at a early morning card headlined by Israel Adesanya and Nasruddin Imavov. It is a pretty fun card, one that has been kind of thrown in the ringer. You know, we're down to 11 fights so far, and there's definitely some interesting ones to say the least. And as I mentioned, it is a card that does start at around 9 a.m. Eastern, so buckle in, everybody. Should be a fun one. We just had a nice week off, and an eventful one for me, at least. I was at the Bills-Chiefs game. I did watch the Bills lose, but it was an incredible atmosphere. I had a great time, top experience. Picked up a Chiefs jersey too. No, I'm just kidding. Jokes aside, it was a great time, and I did enjoy the week off. But we ourselves more than 12 consecutive weeks of fights. It is going to be a phenomenal year of fights and hopefully gambling on them too. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, show some love. As always, we're going to break down every single fight from a betting and a DraftKings perspective. For more content, check out Coolbet, which is in the description down below, as well as Established to Run for some premium DFS content. I do work over there, do a podcast to help out with projections, rankings. Check them out. I highly recommend. With that out of the way, let's not waste any more time. Let's dive in. The fight night started versus the 3-0 Hamdi Abdelwahab versus the 11-4 Jamal Pogues. And this is just, I don't even know what to say about this fight. It is a interesting one to say the least. Jamal Pogues has been in the UFC for a while. Definitely not champ material by any means, no offense to him, but a guy who's got decent wrestling at lower weight classes, but has not shown it at this 265 heavyweight division. He is someone who's a bit undersized for the division, has great volume, has shown solid cardio at times, but the guy doesn't really just excel at anything. Not the heavyweight power you like to see. His wrestling hasn't really been utilized, even though he has at 205. And again, undersized for the division. Whereas Hamdi Abdelwahab, if you guys don't remember, came onto the scene short notice against Dontel Mays, and I bet against him there. I thought Dontel Mays could do it, but Hamdi Abdelwahab, with the wrestling experience he has, showed that he was able to go out there, fight pretty well, and beat Mays pretty handily until he did pop for some steroids, and now he's 2 years off, and now he's back to see him here. So really just a low-level heavyweight affair here. Hamdi, I do think, has a solid skill set. He's a guy who I think can make improvements, but his striking doesn't blow me away. His cardio is still yet to be tested, and especially depending on how he was on those steroids, maybe it's different, but he does have solid wrestling. He does throw with fighting intention. He does have more measurables I think he can improve. So simply put, I think this is the wrestling, the power of Hamdi that could win this fight, because we have seen Jamal Pogues stuck on his back. We have seen him lose optics that way. But the guy who I think would be the better minute winner on the feet is Jamal Pogues. Pumps out more volumes, is a more proven striker, has a 4-inch reach advantage here. I think that there are reasons to back either fighter, but it's really going to come down to how Hamdi looks. If Hamdi is clearly off the sauce and looks like he just rolled off the couch, then maybe I'll get there on Pogues. But if not, I'm going to pick Hamdi Abdelwahab to get it done this week. I think if he gets him down, he has that big X factor that he can control him. He can win those optics with Pogues on his back, because Pogues did struggle to get up last time. And on the feet, it's the minute winner in Pogues, or it's the moment winner in Hamdi Abdelwahab. So give me Hamdi. A low-level confidence affair, and DraftKings-wise, it's going to be Hamdi as well. Pogues is a guy who has not scored well in DraftKings. 2 wins, 56 and 81. Not a big power threat, not a guy I anticipate going forward looking for takedowns. He is mostly a volume-based decision guy, which does not score well in DraftKings. Instead, Hamdi, a guy who I do think anticipate having more knockout upside, more wrestling upside. I think I did score 99 in a win last time. So a guy I don't mind playing this week, a solid GPP option, but not a guy I'm confident in by any means, although I am picking him to win. Next up, we have the 14-2 Bogdan Grad versus the 8-4 Lucas Alexander. Lucas Alexander coming off of a lengthy layoff, which honestly I would take a layoff too if I was knocked out by Jack Kasaragi, but we're happy to see him back here. He is a solid distance striker, very good technically, a guy who does pack a solid punch there as well, but this guy has his flaws. His chin is there to be hit. His ground game is really subpar. He can be taken down. He's been submitted 3 times as well. But on the feet, very good technician, very good distance striker, and he does manage range very well. Bogdan Grad's kind of the opposite. The guy manages range horribly. He gets hit by a lot, and he's in a lot of these brawls, but he is a fun, entertaining fighter. He will continue to go forward. He has more of a roll-running skill set. Not that same technician on the feet, but a lot of power, solid ground game if he decides to go there as well. And you know what? He's been in some wars. You could debate if he beat him as well or not, but a guy who is very entertaining to say the least. Again, a very, very close line fight, but I'm going to slide here with Grad, a guy who was originally underdog. The line has kind of moved here a bit, but the fighter who I just think has more paths. I completely see a world where Lucas Alexander goes out there, outpoints him technically to a decision. That's certainly a possibility, but the guy who I think has more knockout power is Bogdan Grad. The guy who has a clear ground advantage, in my opinion, is Grad if he decides to go there as well. I think he just has more paths getting it done. Again, Lucas Alexander is going to be the better fighter at range, so Grad's got to close that distance, but that's something I think he can do. Not the most confidence play. This is a very low-level fight, in my opinion. I don't see these guys going pretty far either way. But if I were to do things a lot of variance, I am picking Bogdan Grad. With that being said, I think the under's also a good look. Grad has been knocked out as well, and he can push a solid pace. I think either fighter is likely to finish. However, I do slightly lean with the Grad finish upside with his ground success, with him throwing heat in the feet as well. So give me the under in this one, a violence field affair, but I am picking Bogues on Grad. Because of that on DraftKings, 8.3K, I got to look to play. Submission upside, wrestling upside, power upside. Alexander won't be getting too often. His one win, he did score 75 points, but still a guy who I think, could knock out Grad. We've seen Grad knocked out before, so maybe a solid GBP player, especially on a slate with only 11 fights. I don't mind going there. And we have the 12-3 Canadian girl, Jasudavicius, versus the 10-4-1 Bueno Silva. Fun fight. If you would have told me this fight a while ago was the way it was, with a big favorite price tag of Jasudavicius, would have been a bit surprised, but she is making a ton of improvements. She is making Canada look very good, probably our best prospect right now, and I'm happy to cheer for her. She goes forward with reckless abandon, a ton of volume, a very, very tough girl, one of those girls who, you don't want to run into in a parking lot because she's tough. She's going to go forward, absorb a lot of damage, and fight back. She's a junkyard dog. And on the ground, she's got phenomenal takedowns, very good top control, and some hellacious ground and pound. Those elbows, the finish upside, she definitely goes for the kill, and she's been looking really, really good recently. Bueno Silva is also that sort of a killer, right? She has more power on the feet, I think, than Jasmine, but a phenomenal ground game. She's able to snatch up neck. She's been headlining a lot of fights. She fought for the belt. Very dangerous fighter down there, but someone who isn't maybe the best minute winner. She struggles on the feet. She's there to be hit. She can be taken down and can be stuck on her back. Two fighters kind of going in opposite directions. Now, I will say this fight is a huge accomplishment. First women fight in Saudi Arabia. All power to them. I'm cheering for them, and I do love me some Jasudavicius. I am worried the line might be a little wide. I think that Bueno Silva is a step up in competition, especially jiu-jitsu-wise, and Jasmine is going to have to mind her P's and Q's. But I'm going to take her. I think she has a way more winning upside. I like her pace. I like her volume on the feet, and I like her ability to control from top position. I do think she can win this fight. However, the kind of way I might be playing this one might be a little under violence. And again, Gordon, WMMA, come on, you gotta stop betting unders. It's like plus 250 for a girl in Jasmine who's got great elbows, great pace, and has been finishing fights, versus a girl Bueno Silva, who is kind of submission or bust in this one, one might say, or someone who has also been finished by cuts and elbows in the past before. So I might play a little bit. I think it's gonna be a high-paced fight. I do like it. DraftKings wise, Jasmine 8.9K, you gotta look towards it, right? She scored 170 points against Priscilla Cachoeira, 1-3 against Silva, has gotten a few wins recently, a ton of takedown upside, great pace, a lot of strikes laid on the ground, and great ground and pound. A phenomenal play at 8.9K, and one of my favorite cash plays on the slate. Whereas Bueno Silva is more of that GDP punt play. Only won one decision. Aside from that, she's getting submissions. 80 against Holm, 108 against Landsberg, 91 against Egger, 91 against Romero Barella. A girl who is very front-loaded, very finisher bust, and someone who I do think if she wins is probably getting a submission. I don't see it happening too often, but someone who will definitely be playing in tournaments, especially an 11-card slate. And speaking of finisher bust here, we have the Terrence Mckinney, 15-7 versus the 14-7 Damir Hadzovic. And Terrence Mckinney, T-Rex, we love the guy, extremely front-loaded, a ton of power early on, great submission games, but a guy who is one of the best round one athletes we've seen. A guy who can go out there and submit you, looks really fast on the feet with a lot of power as well, and someone who is very dangerous, then kind of falls off the cliff. His cardio's not really there. He got chin checked bad last time in a bad knockout there, but someone who is just so fun to watch. And how do they reward someone who is so fun to watch? Well, they give him a guy, Damir Hadzovic, who is coming up ACL surgery, who has not fought in a few years, who's now 38 years old, and who definitely has been struggling recently in the UFC. He was taken down several times by Diakashi last time, was submitted by Moicano, has been knocked down in the past before. It's a guy who's definitely not at the peak of his career, who's currently declining, and definitely has his holes in the grappling game, all past that Terrence Mckinney could definitely go out there and exploit. So do we want to be backing Terrence Mckinney, a guy with one round of cardio, at a very high clip with a lot of confidence? Not really. But when you look at the way this fight's going to play out, especially in round one, you have to favor Mckinney. He is going to have an extreme ground advantage if he wants to go there. Takedowns will be there. Submission game is definitely there. He has a phenomenal transition to the back and great grappling down there. I think he'll win this fight in an instant on the ground. And even on the feet, although Damir Hadzovic has power, I think Mckinney thinks to be quicker. He's definitely younger and at a better stage of his career, and I do think he himself can land a knockout. So all the paths on Mckinney's side of things, and he'll be my pick to win, despite it being a little scary backing him with only a round of cardio. That being said, 9.2K, a GBP play for sure. When he does get those early finishes, 131 against Moreau, 102 against Breeden, got an early win against Gonzalez where he scored 104, 126 against Frivola, a ton of finish upside on his side of things. Whereas Hadzovic, I think he can get a knockout. That's his path to victory. And although it may not score the best, 7K could break the slate. So a fight I'm definitely target, one that is expected to end inside the distance. And I do have to side with Terrence Mckinney. He does have such a clear advantage on the ground, but a fight that I do think should deliver a very fun affair. I'm going to pick Terrence Mckinney. Then we have the 13-1 Shamil Gaziev versus the 9-2 Thomas Petersen, headlining our prelims here. Gaziev, a guy who I haven't really been the highest on, and he's got a ton of power. He was kind of jumped into stardom early with a main event against Rozenstriuk, but his cardio's not there. He does not have the most minute-winning opportunities. He's just not a good fighter, in my opinion. But he's huge. He does have power. You know what? He's not afraid to walk you down and throw hellacious damage. I still have questions about his ground game. I still have questions about his cardio, and he is definitely not a guy I want to back against good level of competition. Luckily for him, he's facing Thomas Petersen, who I would not necessarily quantify a good level of competition. Petersen's a great wrestler, great grappler, but he struggles against larger fighters. His strike is not necessarily there. He is there to be hit, and having a loss to Jamal Pogues on the record is certainly not a thing you want to see. With that being said, though, I'm going to favor Gaziev here. I'm going to pick him to win, although I think the line is wide, just because the reason I just mentioned. I still yet to see Gaziev on his back, and Thomas Petersen is going to shoot takedowns. Landed a couple against Usman there. I do think he's got solid ground control, solid submission game once he gets down there, and Gaziev is just slow, and I do think he can be stuck on his back if he's put there. You can question if his willingness to be there. He can definitely look like a guy who can quit as the fight goes on, and I do think the longer it goes, the more grappling exchanges there are, Petersen can definitely get his own. However, if you ask me the most likely outcome, probably that Gaziev goes forward, lands big shots, and probably gets Petersen out of there. So a fight that I do expect to end inside the distance, whether it be Gaziev with power early, or maybe even Petersen with some grappling success and some tiring out of Gaziev as the fight goes on later. Give me Gaziev to win. However, I would not be playing at minus 400. Petersen is definitely live, but I do think Gaziev wins. DraftKings-wise, both are live. Whether it be early KO for Gaziev, I do think he could live off his price tag and score very well against a guy who was there to be hit. But Petersen, 6.9K again, another guy who could break the slate and win. I like him more than Hadzovic, if I'm being honest, because he does have grappling upside, but a fight I'm definitely targeting on DraftKings. And then on to the main card. We have ourselves the 11-3 Muhammad Naimov versus the 11-3-1 Khan Ofli. Ofli coming off the Ultimate Fighter. I do like the guy. He was knocked out bad last time, but a guy who I think can succeed a lot on the ground. He's got good takedowns, very solid grappling, but his striking is kind of lackluster. He's there to be hit. He has been knocked out. He's also pretty small for the division as well, so there are definitely some flaws in the Khan Ofli side, and I understand why Naimov is a big favorite, but this line might be too wide. Naimov is a guy who's got a ton of power. He dominated against Malarkey there. A guy who will do whatever it takes to win, including fence grabs and everything else. And a guy who can scramble if he comes to it, but I still have questions about his minute-winning capabilities. I still have questions about his ground game resiliency. I mean, Lima tapped him out almost immediately when he did get the back there. I still think there's holes in his game. So very, very similar to last time. Almost the exact same thing the last fight, except for 120 pounds lighter. I think Naimov is the most likely winner of this fight. If I have to pick a winner, it's going to be Naimov. I think he can land the big shots and he can win the striking optics against Ofli. But the later the fight goes and the more grappling exchanges there are, I favor Ofli. I think he's the better wrestler of the two. I think he's the better submission grappler. And I do think if this gets extended, is a guy who I can want to back at a big underdog price tag. I'm tempted to take the dog straight up, but I will side with Naimov because I do have to favor his striking and level of experience. But I think this fight is close to the line of tails. I don't mind some Khan Ofli. DraftKings wise, again, Naimov does have knockout power, but I think he's maybe my least favorite of this top tier. I favor the early knockout upside of Gaziev. I favor the early knockout upside of Pavlovich and Mckinney too. Then you got Jasmine below him, who's just got phenomenal upside, right? So maybe my least favorite. Ofli is very similar to Petersen. He needs extended wrestling success. We have yet to see it so far. So certainly a risky play. Not my favorite fight in the card, but one where I do think the line is wide. And we have the 16-4 for Ziam versus the 11-2 Mike Davis. And I'll just be completely honest with you guys. I have struggled picking for Ziam fights. Sometimes he looks really good, sometimes he looks really bad, and I have gotten him wrong recently. So take this breakdown with a grain of salt. I do think that he looked really good last time, has made improvements. He's a guy who still is a very solid striker, but a guy who still maybe has his flaws. He can be taken down, he's been submitted quickly before, and on the feet, he's a great range striker, but can struggle if you are able to get in close. Mike Davis is who's definitely been less active. Been 10 months since his last fight, does certainly bounce around when it comes to taking scraps here, but a guy who's definitely been injury plagued, let's put it that way. But he's very talented. He's won his last 4 and looked very good doing so, whether it be by landing a few takedowns or striking the feet. He has definitely shown his well-rounded game plan. He's got great volume, great cardio, great power, and very good wrestling and transition on the mat, shall he have to use it, which he definitely did against Porsche. In this fight here, though, I think that it's one of those ones where skill for skill, the better technical fighter, and the fighter who I think is just better than the other is going to be Mike Davis, and I'm going to pick him to win. But there are so many things at play here, whether it be the layoff, whether it be how Mike Davis approached this fight, whether it be wrestling or not, that I'm cautious to play him at this price tag. I have to favor him on the ground if he decides to go to it, and I think he can definitely hold his own on his feet, and both these guys are pretty durable. So I think if it's a 15-minute striking affair, that maybe this line's wide, maybe Ziam is able to win it. But what decides this fight's probably going to be the grappling of Mike Davis. I think he can have takedown success. I think he can go out there and win the fight that way. But I'm just not certain he'll use it, so I'm a bit scared to back him because of that. With that being said, give me Mike Davis. I'm picking him to win. I hope to see him more active and hope his injuries are past him, but definitely something you have to be cautious of when you are backing him here. DraftKings-wise, I'm not a big Ziam guy on DraftKings. He has not typically scored that well, aside for his last win, which is 113, but A guy who really needs a knockout, not much wrestling upside, not going to submit anybody, not the most volume. So not really getting to Ziam. Mike Davis has scored 9 takedowns in a fight before. So guy I will be looking to play here. Again, if he gets his takedowns going, his best pass. So his best path, so I don't mind him at 8.4K, a guy I will be playing. The 18-3 Said Nurmagomedov versus the 21-3 Vinicius Oliveira. A very, very fun fight. The knockout of the year contender here, and Vinicius Oliveira, that incredible flying knee versus one of the best ninja chokes here in Said Nurmagomedov. Both these guys bring different styles. Vinicius Oliveira is a guy who I think starts slowly, but really builds. A ton of power, great physicality, very flashy and a good showman, but a guy who has been knocked out, a guy who has been controlled in the mat, and a guy who does definitely start slow. Said Nurmagomedov is not the typical Nurmagomedov. He doesn't wrestle at a high clip, but he does have a phenomenal grappling game. He doesn't have the most volume on the feet, and he throws a lot of crazy spinning stuff, but he is a very, very good range striker. And I think this is one of my favorite fights on the card, but I think it's one where I'm going to have to favor Said Nurmagomedov in it. You know, Vinicius Oliveira is still a guy who did drop an early round to Sopaj, was pretty much getting beat everywhere in that fight until Sopaj did tire out. And it's a spot where although Oliveira builds, although he does improve, I still have to favor Said Nurmagomedov a lot of these spots, whether it be the grappling, shall I get to it? I think Said Nurmagomedov is a phenomenal grappler and definitely has the ninja choke to put anybody away in an instant, or the distance striking. Yes, Vinicius Oliveira is able to walk you down and land good boxing shots, but the better kicker from range, I have to favor Said Nurmagomedov. Better minute winner from the outside is going to be him as well, so I'm picking him to win. I think there's definitely some spots where, the pressure of Oliveira could maybe steal a round, but the guy I'm more confident in winning 2 rounds or having some submission grappling upside is going to be Said here, and I am picking him to win. Because of that, it is a tricky one. He has scored really poorly in the past, but when he's finishing fights, he's scoring well. If you think he submits Oliveira, play him on DraftKings, but if not, I'm struggling to play him, if I'm being honest. I'm picking him to win, but Jasudavicius scores better, a ton of high-scoring guys up top. Mike Davis has grappling upside below him, so he has so many paths to win that he doesn't necessarily need an early submission, so he could definitely bust in this play. Certainly a risky play. Whereas I see a lot of love for Oliveira. Again, not a guy I think wins at the distance too often. We're 73 to loss last time. I prefer other underdogs. A very fun fight to watch as a fan, but on DraftKings, definitely one of my least favorite ones on the card. Then we have the 18-3 Sergey Pavlovich versus the 15-5 Jair Rozenstriuk. Pavlovich is a big favorite and a big name, a guy who did compete for the belt, a ton of power. That's what he is. He is an absolute freight train, terrifying to go against, will go forward and look to knock your head off. He is a very, very solid fighter, and it's fun to watch him, but he definitely has his flaws. His ground game's yet to be tested. He is just a tank of a man with a ton of punching power. We've all seen him knocked out. He has been controlled at range. He needs to go forward and be his old self. When he goes forward and blitzes, he's almost unstoppable. His power is unparalleled and can certainly knock anybody's lights out. Just ask Jair Rozenstriuk. I mean, it was a bit of a while ago now, but he has been blitzed and knocked out. Nagano did it to him, and that's kind of the style that I think Pavlovich has to implement here. Because Rozenstriuk has a ton of kickboxing experience. I do favor him to be the better kickboxer from the outside, but what we're going to get here is a very similar fight to Sergey Pavlovich's last one. A guy who is more powerful and more explosive in Sergey Pavlovich versus a guy who wants to fight at range and probably the better minute winner in Jair Rozenstriuk. It's minutes versus moments, and let's see if Sergey Pavlovich can adapt. Last time we bet Volkov to win a decision, and although it's always scary because Pavlovich can explode at any moment, he was able to get it done. Pavlovich did not have those same bursts. He struggled at range, and Volkov just picked him apart. And that's kind of what Rozenstriuk just did to Gaziev. So why not here? Let me reiterate. I think it's very plausible that Pavlovich goes forward and just knocks out Rozenstriuk in one punch. He is super powerful. He can take anybody's lights out. But the better minute winner here of the two, if this goes to decision, is going to be Jair Rozenstriuk. And I do think he has better optics, better range control, and a more diverse arsenal of weapons that can make him win this fight. So simply put, I'll probably be sprinkling some Rozenstriuk by decision at plus 900, the same way I did to Volkov last time. I definitely think there's a path. I'm scared to pick him straight up. I think I might pick him straight up, but I'm scared to do so because Pavlovich could end this fight at any moment with his power, but the line's wide. Rozenstriuk can definitely win minutes, and that is going to be his preferred style. So Pavlovich early, Rozenstriuk late by decision. Let's see if Pavlovich has made those improvements. DraftKings-wise, though, it's Pavlovich or nothing. At 1K, his scores on DraftKings are incredible. 114, 144, 131, 108, 109, 106. All of them first-round finish wins. That's incredible. The fight gets extended at all. He does lose, so that does give Rozenstriuk some success, but Pavlovich is one of the best GPP plays on the slate. Both him and Mckinney are round 1 animals or bust, and there are guys who are going to be very popular this week. It's hard to get away from them. So give me Rozenstriuk actually in an upset. However, I will have plenty of Pavlovich on DraftKings. And then we have the 15-0 Magomedov versus the 22-3 Michael Venom Page. Another fun fight. Page making his way up to 185 here, and against a guy Magomedov who has a ton of height. The guy with one eye, the bullet, a very good striker, and this is going to be a striker's delight. If there are any takedowns this one, I'll be extremely surprised. It'll be the fun, dynamic spamming of kicks of Magomedov versus the weird like side style of Michael Page, who goes forward and spins and is a very smart tactical defensive fighter. I want to preface this by saying I'm fully aware I can probably be screwed by some Saudi Arabian judges who want to see Magomedov succeed here, but I'm going to pick Michael Venom Page. MVP, I think, is being a bit overlooked here, and you know, if I'm going to go out there and pick Armen Petrosyan to beat Magomedov, I'm going to pick MVP for sure. Because MVP is a guy who just controls range very well, so defensively sound, is able to make adaptations, able to strike in such a tricky style that people often struggle with it. Magomedov, although he's phenomenal offensively, is there to be hit. And that's the difference. Is Michael Venom Page is a phenomenal offensive fighter. He's got an arsenal of strikes. He can go out there and land him in a good clip, but he's so defensively sound. It is so hard to hit him. Whereas Magomedov is also offensively brilliant, but you can hit him easily. Like, the guy's there to be hit, there to absorb damage. It is super tough, but I think the defense is going to be the difference here. And Page's style is just a tricky one to deal with. I think he's the guy I'm about to favor here. It's going to be a real close one because I do anticipate it going to the judges' scorecards, and that's never a good idea. But I'm going to pick the dog. I think the line's weird. Magomedov is there to be hit, and I have to favor that Page's style is able to make adaptations and land the big shots. Never been much of a Michael Venom Page guy, but I do think he's able to get this win here. Should be a phenomenal fight. When it comes to DraftKings, though, maybe my least favorite fight to target. Magomedov in his 2 decision wins scored 97 and 74 at 8.8K. Does not look very good. Whereas Page in his decision win scored 52. Both fighters are not good DraftKings scores because they are pure strikers. A fight that I do anticipate going all 15 minutes. I will not be getting it too often on DraftKings. Purely a contrarian GPP play. And then we have our main event, the 24-4 Israel Adesanya, 15-4 Nasruddin Imavov. A very, very fun fight. Again, another fight where if you asked me 3 years ago, it would be Adesanya by a mile, but can he recover? Is his mind in the right place? How is he doing? Because you ever saw, say, 28-year-old Frenchman who's an absolute killer. I mean, Imavov has looked phenomenal recently, a ton of power, very good adaptive striker as well, and he does have a solid ground game. But it's hard for me to say that in a fight that Adesanya is mentally prepared for, that he's going to lose a striking affair. I mean, he's been fighting these big dudes his whole life, and he's been able to dispose of them. He has such good range management, such good distance striking, and solid power too, and I think it's so tough for me to see him go out there and losing these fights if his heart is in it. Now, I will admit Imavov definitely has the age. I think he's got maybe even a power advantage as well, and definitely a grappling advantage. I just haven't seen him put it all together. I mean, only a few years ago, he was losing fights to Philip Hawes. It was only a few years ago that he's been getting tired later in these fights. But to me, it's going to be a battle of fight styles. If Imavov goes out there and spams takedowns early on, maybe he can have some success, maybe he can tap out Adesanya, but Adesanya's been a phenomenal takedown defender, especially when he sees it coming. I mean, DDP's a whole different beast, but Adesanya can defend takedowns. I favor him at range. I favor his reach advantage. And his favorite striking. It's so hard to pick against him in the striking here. And I do think he has more battle tests to go out there and win this fight. This will be the first fight that's not for a belt in forever for Israel Adesanya, but a guy who was at the top, who was amongst the legends for such a long time. Because of how good he is as a striker, I do think he can win this fight. I do think his heart's improving, training with Whitaker and looking to get back into it. And I have to pick him to win this fight. Am I doing so with the utmost confidence? No. But again, gun to my head, who am I picking? Israel Adesanya. I favor his striking. I favor his takedown defense and cardio as the fight gets extended. I'm worried about Imavov and his power and his grappling. I just don't think he can sustain it. So give me Adesanya to win the striking exchanges and get this fight done. DraftKings-wise, though, it's always tough to play Adesanya at a high clip. He's not the best scorer. Honestly, has never scored 100 points since Costa, so he's definitely not a must-play despite the 5-rounder. I might even prefer an Imavov, 7.6K, a guy who has scored 102 against Dolidze, 89 against Cannonier, who is definitely at a salary relief, and he does have a lot more power. I would even say he might even have more finishing upside, and definitely some grappling upside, so I might prefer Imavov of the two, but definitely not a main event you must play, considering the low-scoring style of Israel Adesanya. That's going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. Let me quickly run through my quick picks. We're taking Israel Adesanya, Michael Venom Page, Josina Rozenstriuk, Said Nurmagomedov, Mike Davis, Muhammad Naimov, Shamil Gaziev, Terrence McKinney, Jasmine Jasudavicius, Bogdan Grad, and Hamdi Abdelwahab. DraftKings-wise, this top range is pretty loaded. Gaziev's first-round finish upside, Pavlovich, McKinney both do as well, whereas Jasudavicius, maybe my favorite play on the slate due to her control time, her spamming of volume, and the pace she brings at 8.9. The mid-range, Mike Davis has a ton of grappling upside. Bogdan Grad has some finish upside, as well as Hamdi Abdelwahab if he's maybe back on the juice. And then underdog-wise, Imavov has a very high ceiling. I think Lucas Alexander could be a solid pivot GBP play. And then my favorite punts this week are Petersen, Ofli, and Bueno Silva. 3 people who I do think has wrestling upside shall it come to that. Betting-wise, nothing locked in yet. I might play some under in the Alexander Grad fight, almost for sure. Maybe the violence in the Silva versus Jasudavicius fight, for sure as well. And then maybe I'll get there to some side Nurmagomedov if the line keeps climbing. All that and more on Twitter at gamblesgordo for my full plays. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I wish you all the best of luck in all your DraftKings and betting endeavors, guys, and let's make some money.